So you're looking to buy some calves, you want to raise your own meat. What is better, steers or heifers? How should you get started? What should you buy? What will gain more weight? What will have a better rate of conversion from feed to animal growth? And what will grow the fastest? That's all coming up in today's video. We've had a lot of talk over the time. A lot of people say a lot of different things, but we're actually going to look at the numbers. Look at the true data. What is the truth of this? We're going to answer those questions today. Stick around. Hi, it's Jared from Strongrootsfarmoh. Welcome back to the channel. We thank you for joining us. Today, I want to talk about this very controversial topic. So today, we're not talking about buying cows. We're not talking about cows that will have babies. We're talking about stockers. And if you don't know the difference, I created a video not too long ago that's down in the description, talked about getting started with cattle, the basic info you need to know before you get started. And so that video is down in the description. So after this video, you can go back and listen. But I will tell you the model, how you start cattle farming, will change with the times, with the market of the time, with the year, with the time of year, with your location. So there's lots of different choices to be made. But today we're going to be talking about one of these specific choices. You want to buy a stocker. So that title, stocker, means a weaned calf, 400 to 500 pounds. You want to buy a calf. You don't want to deal with a bull. You don't want to deal with moms. You're going to buy this calf, this stocker, and you're going to raise it either till 800-900 pounds and take it back to the market to make money on the weight, or you're going to raise it all the way to butcher. You want to raise your own meat on your small farmer homestead. So which is better? This controversial one topic, which is better? Now this is a very controversial topic, like I said, because right now if you have cattle, you have a decision in your mind. You don't even need to listen to this rest of this video in your opinion because you know. And most of us think that way. Most older farmers that I talk to, they will tell me steers grow faster. It's a known fact. That's why the market is higher priced on steers. Steers are better. And so they don't even want to listen to the numbers. But I wanted to delve into this. I wanted to ask the question, why do people say this? Is it really the truth? Do I just trust what people say, trust rumors, or do I look into the numbers? And so in my life, as I've gotten older, I've started to question everything. Everything any teacher ever told me about health, every question, everything that any preacher ever told me about the Bible, I'm questioning. Is it true? I'm digging in and looking at facts for myself. And today we're going to do it on this topic, heifers versus steers. Let's talk some numbers first and some points. I'm going to show you data, and then I will talk about my choice at the end of the video, but my goal is that you make your own decision. It's not a cookie cutter decision. What you buy is up to you, and you look at the data and make the own decision. So let's get to it. Today in the video, we're going to go through each category of data. And so there's a few things. We'll talk about these. I'll run through them quick. You're going to do at starting price and then price available at butcher. Okay, so the starting price is what is this calf going to cost you today? And then what is he or she going to be worth when you butcher her? So whether that be pounds of meat back, or if you were having to take her back to the stockyards, what would she be worth or he be worth at the time? Okay, so there is a value in between. So we're going to look at those values. We're going to look at days on feed. So I have looked at statistics from different states, from different feed corporations, Cargill, different people. From 1970 until today, I have been crunching data for 2 weeks now, looking at how many days an animal in these large feedlots, how many days they are on feed. Now, I will tell you, if you are a grass-fed operation, I do not have days on feed for grass-fed operations because there's not enough data for me to get a good point. So most of this stuff is going to be a grain-fed style of a data, whether that be on silage and a grain mix or full grain. But this data is mainly published from large feedlots where they watch the numbers closely. There's millions of head of animal that are run through this data. And so days on feed is another point that we're going to look at. Obviously, the shorter time on feed, the lower the number, the better would be, because the faster the animal would get to butcher weight from the time that you purchased them, meaning the less feed in them. The other data point we're going to look at is conversion rate. So they put in so many pounds of feed in, and they get so many pounds of animal back out. We're going to look at that conversion rate. And then we're going to skip to another style of the study. So quality of the end result, the meat. What is the quality? So there's two studies that I specifically looked at, one from UK, one was on the tenderness. So they took all these animals, steers and heifers, they rated them and they put them in a tender test. So this is a pressure test of the meat. I prefer that because it's not a subjective taste test. The way it looks on a grade, I don't really prefer the grading system because it's more subjective. We look at it and whatever picture it meets selects the grading. So we're actually going for a objective numerical test, and that is a pressure test for tenderness. And then the other one is a loin eye measurement test. So how big is the loin eye? And that will just kind of correct, the ribeye is the most expensive typically cut of meat. They got the fillet and the ribeye in there. So that loin eye determines the value of the animal, but really we want to look at hanging weight, which is what most of us small farmers sell by. We're looking at hanging weight of these animals at the time of butcher. So lots of different data points. We're going to go through them individually, and then we'll get back together in closing and look at all of them in one piece and value at the end with the numbers. At the start, and obviously we're looking to find out, answer this question, which is better, steers or heifers? So keep that in mind through every one of these data points. So we start first with our beginning price. What is this animal going to cost us, whether it's from a local farmer or from a stockyards? Obviously, I don't know when you're watching this video, you need to look at your own local numbers, okay? Take it out. I went to the stockyards today, the sale was on Thursday, I'm making this video on Saturday. So these are numbers from this week in January of 2025 from the Paris, Kentucky stockyards, okay? This is where I'm pulling numbers from, and these are just averages. But go to your local stockyards and put these numbers in for yourself. But today, if you bought a steer, the average price for a 500-pound steer was $2.95. They are cheaper right now. They will hit $4, I imagine, this spring. But right now, it's winter. People don't want to get rid of them because they're going to feed them through the winter, or the ones that they are getting rid of and people that are buying are saying, we're going to have to feed them hay. So price is a little lower, but we're at $2.95, which is still a fantastic price. There you're looking at $14.75 per head to buy an animal at 500 pounds as a steer. Whereas as a heifer, they are $2.63 at 500 pounds equals $1,315. Both of these are the same exact weight. They can even be brothers and sisters. And so there's the price. So as we look at the opening price for heifers, most people don't argue this. We know heifers are typically cheaper at the 400 and 500 pound weight, but I wanted to use comparable numbers. So there we have it. $2.95 to $2.63. The steer cost you $160 more. That is really the number you're going to need to remember throughout this video, that in the beginning, you had to pay $160 more for a steer. All right, so now we look at days on feed. So from this 500 pounds to butcher ready carcass weight, we looked at average feedlots, okay? And so I will tell you, between heifers and steers alike, the average was 157 days. Now, this is data from 1970 to 2023, I think, is when my data stopped. So a year, we got a year older here. It is now January of 25. So all of that time, things have gotten better. They have had different styles of feeds. They have different qualities of feeds. But averaged out, it took 157 days to get that animal from 500 pounds to grade A slaughter weight ready to go. Most of the time, that is around 1,200 pounds, and we'll talk about that right now. So as we talk about this 157-day average, I'm going to split it up to the heifer. We're going to go back and split it up to heifer and steer. But understand, when you look at the final weight of heifers and steers, your steers are 100 to 180 pounds, depending on the year. It really swang throughout these different years higher than your heifers. So your steers weigh more. A good way as a small farmer to think about it, if I look at mama cow, right? Mama cow weighs 1,100 pounds. When the heifer that she drops is ready to butcher, it'll be 100 pounds, 50 to 100 pounds less than mom. So 1,000 to 1,050. If she drops a steer, when he's ready for butcher, he will be 50 to 100 pounds more than mom. Now, at that ratio, this is not heifer mom, this is cow mom. So she's a 4, 5, 6-year-old cow. She's had years to put on weight, remember. So she's bigger than the heifer that's ready for breeding. So when you look at that, there's a 200-pound difference really in finishing weight between a heifer and a steer. Now let's go back and talk about days on feed. Okay, it's important as we talk about days on feed that you understand that steer went from 500 pounds to his ready weight, but the heifer went from her starting weight till her ready weight for butcher, but she doesn't weigh as much, okay? Everybody says steers grow faster. When you look at this data, they are right. Every piece of data from 1970 to 2023 say that steers spend less time on feed than heifers. So is it a known fact? Is it a fact that steers grow faster, they are better? Well, by all cases in the data, yes. The fact is though, how much faster? I averaged this out and I took every year. The average from 1970 to 2023 from all of this data that I crunched from different studies in different places was 9 days. That's it, 9 days. Now, if I looked closer, the last 5 years from the big Iowa, I got a big Iowa one, I got a feedlot in Oklahoma that published their numbers, and I looked at these, and every number from these different places was somewhere between 8 to 14 days, meaning that the heifers, if they spent 257 days on feed, the steers only spent 249 days on feed. What does that mean for a small farmer though? It means the same thing. It means that steer, that heifer, you're gonna have to feed for 15 more days. Really? 15 days, that's it? Like, I can't even get it scheduled into the butcher. That 15 days is nothing to me as a small farmer, as far as a difference between steers and heifers. Now, to a lot that has 1 million head on it, is 15 days a big deal? Yeah. 15 days of feeding is hundreds of thousands of dollars over the life of this big corporation that has 1 million head in a feedlot. Those numbers are crucial to them, okay? And so days on feed is really critical. And so this price that they're willing to pay for the steer drives that price up at the market. They're willing to pay $160 more for a steer in the beginning because they save 15 days per head in the end. Plus, their weight is higher as they sell. They sell these to the stockyards, or I'm sorry, to the butcher. So these feedlots now sell to Smithfield or whoever, and they go to the slaughterhouses. They get a slaughter live weight. That's how these feedlots make money. So when the steer, even though he costs $160 more, he spends less day on feed and he weighs more. Even though for a small farmer, 14 days is nothing, it's crucial to a big feedlot. But now we have this rumor or thought process throughout all of cattle farming that steers are better. And they are, they do grow faster according to this number. But are they really that much better? Are they really that much faster? To a small farmer, you make that choice. The next number that I delve into was conversion rate. Conversion rate is important because the amount of feed that goes in order to gain that weight. And I was kind of surprised here. When I looked at conversion rates, you look at like 0.3 conversion rate on average through all these things, the heifers have a better conversion rate. Meaning, if the heifer eats 3 pounds of feed, she gains 1 pound of body weight. That's what this number means when you look at the conversion weight number. If it's 0.3 or 3.2, that's 3.2 pounds of feed to 1 pound of body weight. That's how they rate this out in your conversion. Heifers are lower, meaning they eat less feed to gain that pound. So wait a minute, now we thought, well, steers grow faster and they get bigger, but they take more feed, and that's true. Steers cost more feed, eat more feed, have a smaller conversion rate than heifers on average for their total life. Now, what about from each weight class? And this is where I was kind of surprised as well. So as I looked at this, the data is really split up in every 100 pounds. So from 5 to 6, from 6 to 7, and so on until butcher weight. As you look at the heifers, they are better from 5 to around 900 pounds. On average, from 1970 or whatever the date was to 2023. They are higher conversion rate. But around that 900 pound rate, the steers, the line goes over, they swap. So from 900 to 1200, the steer has a better conversion rate. And as I got to thinking about it, that kind of makes sense. Heifers have a better conversion rate, and as they go to 900 pounds, they start slowing down because they're only really gaining fat, whereas the steer is still putting on muscle mass because he's going to be bigger. Okay, so when they weigh at 100 pounds, now if we looked at days, conversion rates, this is the data that I can't find. So if you looked at day 100 and the steer would weigh more, but you took his food in divided by his poundage gained in a day cycle, I think the conversion rate would be better on steers. But because it's broke up into days, not pounds, and conversion rate is really food in versus poundage back. That's really what a conversion rate is. The conversion rate number is always better on heifers until really you pass that 900 pounds. But on average, the total life, heifers convert better than steers. So as a small farmer, we're going to have less feed in heifers. That's a pretty good number. The next thing I looked at was value at butcher. And I don't think these numbers are true. Well, they're true. They're true to the slaughter. So if your only option was to send them to slaughter, the value would hold true. And so what I have found is in the beginning, we had a $160 value difference, right? As we got closer to slaughter, those numbers come closer together. The steer still remains more expensive. He's actually less expensive per pound. Steer or heifers are more expensive than steers were over this long lifespan of these numbers, right? On average, they averaged cheaper. But because they weighed more, the total value of the steer was more. So when you look at it, and they actually take these numbers in as in a difference, the difference in number was around $200. It actually held about the same, but the heifer's price per pound was more. But that 160-pound difference went to a $200 difference because the steers weighed so much more at the end. So when you're looking at price per pound, though, heifers went out when it comes to the end. And here's what I think is going on. The numbers are still brought from a global stockyard system, right? It's still the overall global number of the animal. If we were only allowed to send these heifers to the butcher house, I think that the heifer price would be more even with growth on the steer price because they're just an animal that carries meat. The problem is that heifers give you more options. So with that steer, he has no testicles, he cannot breed. He's only gonna be an old animal and die or butchered for meat. That's his only two things he's good for now. But the heifer, on the other chance, she can be butchered for high quality meat. She can go and be a breed animal on a farm. She can be sold for embryos. She can be all kinds of different things, right? So there's more options for her. You can breed her and sell as her bred animal. She can have a calf. You can have cow-calf pairs. You can sell her as an open heifer for a breeding stock farm. There's all different line items. When you look at the stockyards, there's more options to sell these heifers. So therefore, the heifer price at butcher ready weight is a little higher than our steer price because there's more options. More people are willing to buy the same animal for 4 different reasons versus 1 different reason on our steer. Last thing, which is the whole wrap up number with all of these things, is the profitability. And so they wrap up all of these things into a number at the end. So we spent more on the steer in the beginning, but he weighs more at the end. He's not worth as much money per pound, but he weighs so much more, he still has a higher value than our heifers, which had a lower cost. The steer wasn't on feed as long as the heifer, but the time that he was on that feed, he ate way more food than the heifer did. So over the lifespan, he eats more, but he gains more. Now we're going to talk about profitability per head. What I have found is when they take all these numbers and they wrap them together, it's averaging somewhere between $9 and $10 a 100-pound per head. That's the way they figure these numbers out. So to help you with this, if we had 1,000 pound, to help me with math, and it was $10 per 100, that's $100 more profit on a steer than they got on a heifer because he wasn't on his feet as long, even though he ate more. The lifespan there is $100 more profit and he weighed more. So that's the total profit per head count. They take all of the other factors out and they wrap them into total profitability. So you're looking at somewhere, because he weighs a little more, between $100 and $160 more profit on a steer than on a heifer if you're a feedlot. That's the numbers I found throughout this big 50-year gap. Now, I got to thinking about that as a small farmer. What does that mean to me? Okay, I'm not a feedlot. I don't have 1 million head. How do these numbers relate to me and how do I apply them to my farm? Okay, so we have found that steers are more expensive. Same thing. All that stuff should be relatable to here. But what is this $160 more? Is it going to be $160 more? I want you to think of it like this. You spent $160 more on a steer day one. So you now have to make up from day one $160 on the steer. You're like, well, I had that calf on my farm, so that doesn't matter. That's not true either. And the way I think about that on my farm is somehow that cow has to have a profitability, right? I have to show her profit in a line item. So for me, the way I control my numbers to understand the profitability of my cows is that I have a breaking point at weaning, and it's somewhere between 400 and 500 pounds. For my math today, let's just say it's 500. So I would look at the market and say, if I sold her calf today to the market would pay me this. Today it would have been that $14.75 for that steer. That cow made me $14.75 in profit, minus out her expenses for the year, gives me how profitable the cow is. Now, let's say I keep this steer on my farm to raise him for meat. I still have that same cost. I still have a $14.75 cost for the calf today inward because I have to pay the cow in order to show a value for my cow. Now you're like, I don't think about all that. It's important that you think this way, otherwise you lose how much cost you have in cows. So I will change the numbers in my system, and I actually change ear tag numbers here when we do this. So I take an ear tag that has the mama number so I can track the calf. When I weigh him in and I change his number to a butcher number that I'm going to keep on the farm, he gets a different number and the value changes. I put a log in my log. I sold him from my cow-calf herd. I sold him to my stocker herd, and he had this value. Now, there's no actual changes of numbers as far as the IRS. This is just for my logs to help my farm run. So I still have that same cost. And that's the way I'm showing you how I do this so that I can pay for my cow, show her value, and then later have a value for this. So either, even if you're keeping it on your farm, day one, steer still has $160, depending on your market, look at your own numbers, higher cost day one. When you sell him, let's say when you butcher him, he is gonna butcher, let's just say 200 pounds, which I think is the higher end. It could be closer to 100 pounds. He's gonna butcher 200 pounds heavier as a live weight. So let's run through this number in my theory as a small farmer. You have 200 more pounds on a steer as a live weight, okay? So we start with our 200 pounds alive. If we butcher, we're taking them to butcher, that's 120 pounds of hanging weight. Now I use the 60% number. It's really more like 63, but yields depend on breeds and all kinds of differences there. So with our animals, we're somewhere between 60 and 63% of live weight is our hanging weight. Whatever your yield is, you're gonna have to figure that out and run these numbers for yourself. Just trying to use numbers to demonstrate how I would figure this out, okay? So we have 120 pounds of hanging weight, 120 pounds times $4. If you sell your hanging weight to customers at $4 a pound hanging weight, that would be $480. $480, what you got for selling the hanging weight of the animal. You know, there's no butcher fee in here, none of that's in there. Minus the original $160 that you paid for that steer, you have a profit of $320. Now, I do want you to remember, that steer, that $320 profit is not total because he ate more than his sister. So it's a little less than that. So just to be conservative, it's probably closer to $300, but to be conservative, let's say $250. The steer is worth $250 more at butcher time than his sister, the heifer. So it's $250 more, steers have to be better. Well, that's still for you to decide, because remember, $250 or $3 if you don't think I'm being too conservative. You have options with the heifer. One, you're starting out small. If you're a small farmer, you had less out of pocket in the beginning. And because you kept your head numbers low because you wanted to have extra grass, if you're grass feeding, or you wanted to spend extra money out of your pocket on grain if you're grain feeding, so you had less cows than really maybe your farm could sustain, less heifers or steers. By choosing heifers, you have less out of pocket in the beginning. That allows you to get a better start on your farm and spend money elsewhere. And then at the end, yes, there's a little less profit, but there's still a good profit on heifers. Also, because you're starting out, you don't know what's going to actually happen. You think you might be able to butcher all these and sell them, but maybe you can't. Or maybe you really like a couple that you bought and you want to keep them back for mama cows. With heifers, you have more options. They're easier to sell as a live animal because there's so many more options. If you can't sell them as meat, you can breed them back for own breed stock on your farm. But yes, they weigh a little less. And if you had your meat sold, the steer could be totally profitable. Well, there's one other study we haven't talked about. When we looked at the study from UK and a few other universities on tenderness, on our tenderness pressure testing, they took the same size animals or the same year animals. I've seen both styles of studies. So whether it was a 1,000-pound steer versus a 1,000-pound heifer, or 150-day on feed steer and heifer, and the steer weighed more, they took those and had tenderization tests. And what I found was really surprising. I believed it before, but the numbers were really one-sided. Before I tell you the numbers, I'm going to tell you I am a 100% believer that 95% of what makes an animal tender is stress. It is a little bit how you feed them. It is a little bit in the breed, which you can say relates to stress, the stress of a specific breed. But how stressed the animal is throughout its life And then especially in the last 48 hours, which means your butcher, if your butcher is loud and doesn't have a good setup to easily move them through, and those endorphins come out, and then adrenaline pumps into their blood right before they're butchered, it can make the meat more stiff. And so tenderness has a lot to do with stress. Now that being said, that is my belief through my experience and what I have seen come out of animals. These studies from these universities revealed the exact same things, and I have always said that heifers are less stressed than steers. And I find that to be true on my farm. I have found it on other people's farms, and now I'm seeing it in a study where heifers, 70% of the top ranking tendernesses came from heifers. Heifers were 70% higher as more tender animals, 70% higher than their brothers, than their steer compartments, okay, as they link them together. So as quality goes, loin eye was a small bit higher because the animal weighed more on the steer, but the heifer had better quality, better marbling, and was more tender. Now, why is this? Well, one, I think heifers have less stress in general. Two, she packed on weight because she's already at a breeding age now when you're ready to butcher her, 2 years old or whatever it would be around that time on grass or on grain. Grass-fed animals, it's even more significant, I will tell you. The significance of that number is higher with heifers because they naturally pack on marbling, they naturally pack on fat to prepare for breeding, whereas the steer is just getting large and he's adding frame, a little bit better. He gets bigger framed than his sister does. But I find that heifers marble better on grass than steers, and this study has confirmed it with both grass and with grain. What's better, heifers or steers? You've heard the data, you've heard me talk forever. It's really up to you what you decide. It is not a clear-cut winner in my opinion, but you will make more money, they will grow faster, they will be bigger if you choose steers, okay? There's more pounds of meat there. But if you want a low input cost, you want higher quality, you will have better meat with heifers, but you're giving up a little bit of that weight due to the fact that she is smaller, and you give yourself more options, more choices at the end, more profitability in choices, because if you get stuck with a customer and you want to keep them live, you have more options to make choices with heifers. Is that more valuable to you? Is that more valuable than $200 in the end? To have less out of your pocket in the beginning and more options at the end. You have to decide that, and context of your farm or your homestead is going to play into all of this. So there you have it. That is the video. I crunched these numbers for a long time. I wanted this to be an objective video, nothing subjective. It's not my opinion, but my opinion is if you don't have a bull on your farm and you're just buying calves as a small farmer, 3, 4, 8 calves to butcher for meat, I would only buy heifers, especially as I got started. Why? Because I have less out of my pocket before I have a lot of money on my farm. I have more options at the end, so I'm not getting stuck with an animal that can only be butchered if I can't sell as much as I thought I could. And then later, I will see what I want to buy more steers or not. Also, if I'm a cow-calf operation, you have a few, you're going to make more money. Let's say that you have 8 calves and you only want to butcher 4. You sell your 4 steers and you keep your 4 heifers. You have more profitability on selling the steers at 500 pounds than you do carrying them to the end. So you can actually make more profit that way, in my opinion, and still remain to keep those options. The problem with having heifers for me now, why I choose steers today, as I've been in this a little longer, is my bull. We are a cow-calf operation. And honestly, steers are just easier to deal with because I want to keep one herd. I want my bulls to be together. Whereas when I keep heifers to butcher back, now I have to segregate to 2 herds to keep the bull away from them so that they can grow and be ready to be butchered instead of be bred. And so I got to keep them separate. Now we do that, we butcher heifers, we sell bred heifers. And so we have ended up the last few years starting to have 2 different herds at times. But I can see how that would be a pain and why steers would be easier for you in that description. So tell me what you think. Comment down below. Tell me what you decide after watching the whole video. What is better, heifers or steers, for you and your farm based on the data and your context? And that's what it really comes down to. Thanks for watching. I hope this was educational for you. I hope it will help you to make decisions on your farm better or your homestead better. Let me know what you think. Thanks for watching and have a good one.